You put the infrastructure, you start building the processes, you get the people aligned, and you start seeing incremental success. But a lot of times they become frustrated because they think that success should happen in a much faster period of time than it does. But the big success really happens in year 2, 3, 4, not in the first 6 months.
There's no silver bullet in sales, but on Sales Against the Odds, we're here to give you the best shot at building a sales infrastructure that helps you scale. I'm your host, Lee Brumbaugh. Welcome back, everyone. This is Sales Against the Odds. My name is Lee Brumbaugh, CEO of Sales Xceleration. Very excited for the podcast today. This is my first time where I've got two guests on. I am joined today by Michael Willis, who's out of Florida. He is a Sales Xceleration advisor I've known for many years, a tenured, seasoned advisor who does a great job of delivering for his clients. Michael, thank you for being with us today. And then I've got Jason Flanzbaum, who is also out of Florida. He is the president of Boca Bearings and has been a client of Michael's. We were just talking about that since, what did we say, 2020? Is that the year? Okay, yeah. Great. So thank you both for joining us. And really the goal of today is, I get this all the time of the clients that we work with in the SMB space, talking about how do Sales Xceleration advisors deliver? How did you make the decision to go with the Sales Xceleration advisor, and kind of what are the results we've seen? So with that, we'll jump in. Jason, I know as we've talked about in the past, you alluded to some of the challenges. I'd like to start with some of the challenges you had from a sales perspective. Where were you struggling? Why did you think about a Sales Xceleration advisor? Tell us a little bit about your journey before kind of meeting Michael.
Actually, so as an organization, we're a 37-year-old company at this point, almost 38 years, I guess, at this point. But before I really came to the company, and for a number of years at the start, 22 years ago, we're really a marketing organization. We were not a sales-driven organization, and we were a successful marketing-driven organization. But the markets that had really allowed us to grow initially were dying, and they were not going to be the markets that were going to take us to the next level of sales growth. And they weren't the markets that were going to allow us to really grow in a proactive way. It was more reactive. So specifically, my father started the business out of my bedroom as a kid, selling bearings to the radio control market. So RC cars, planes, helicopters, literally talking to kids on the phone a lot of times, directly one-on-one. And then he built up a dealer network of hobby shops, and that grew a little bit into fishing and bicycle shops. And the reality is that the RC market has really been eviscerated, and most kids don't really want to play with something that breaks and then they can't use it. They'd rather play with a video game. That's just the truth. So that market was really declining, and we were spending 10% of our revenue on marketing to that area, which was a sizable amount of money, which was, magazine ads, and it was then display ads on the internet, and going to trade shows, hobby trade shows. And it was an inordinate amount of money for a market that was really declining and difficult to be proactive about. We hired a young gentleman at a decent salary to sit on the telephone and call hobby shops all day long. And it was terrible. And most of those hobby shops were closing. Most were being replaced with e-commerce sites. Most of those e-commerce sites were buying direct from factories to begin with. And they didn't really need us. And it was extremely difficult and frustrating. But at the same time, we had always been evolving to sell to not only the retail and consumer level, but to the bearing distribution level, and then the industrial end user. So over the years, by the time Michael came along, we really saw the handwriting on the wall. We really understood that the industrial end user was somebody we could proactively sell to. And you can identify a buyer, you can identify a need, you can make phone calls, you can actually develop a relationship, and you can get long-term repeatable business. And that's when, we really started to consider, well, we need to be a sales-driven organization. And what happens when you do that as an owner and you become the sales manager, right? So I had the distinct pleasure of getting to go and hire and train and manage salespeople, which I found extremely difficult and frustrating and emotional. It became very emotional and very high stress. And managing salespeople while also trying to run a company and deal with marketing and deal with everything else became something that it was just difficult. There's no other way to describe it. There were a number of fighting matches, yelling matches. There were a number of, well, you just get out of here kind of conversations. It was just too much for me. It was too much for me to deal with. And we went the normal path that probably a lot of organizations go through, right? Well, maybe not all organizations, but then I hired a friend of my wife's, and I got to make that mistake once. And so I never have to make that mistake again. And that gentleman just wasn't appropriate for the position. And then I did what probably most organizations do, right? I found my best sales guy in the organization, and I moved him up to a sales management position. I was lucky enough that gentleman identified that was not his strong suit, and he took a step backwards and stayed with the organization for many, many years and was really my trusted partner and a great salesperson. And that was sort of the path, right, where I was trying to do it myself, trying to promote from within, trying to find somebody external. We use Traction to run the company. We've been using Traction for over 12 years. We're a part of the Grow Florida and CEO Nexus networks. And those networks have been tremendous for me in finding individuals like Michael Wills. And they're always promoting the fractional concept, right? That fractional CFO, fractional sales manager, those kinds of ideas. And somebody must have referenced Sales Xcelerator through that network. And Michael was referred to me.
Good history. And a question for you. When you started, before you started hiring the salespeople, were you doing some of the sales yourself?
I mean, again, sales around here really looked like answering the telephone, right? So phone rang, somebody called, somebody in the organization would take it. At that point, we were in a smaller space. We were all in one room together. People would be having conversations with a customer, and everybody's chiming in from the corners. No, say this, say that. No, tell them this, tell them that. Hang up the phone, put it on hold. So it was that kind of a experience where the people who were answering the phone, sometimes it could be the warehouse guy, it could be the front desk guy, it could be the marketing girl. They were answering and trying to deal with customers because we were a small company. We did everything. Everybody did everything. So that's what sales looked like. And then ultimately it would bubble up, right? It would either be me or somebody else that would have to talk to a customer and try and guide them in a particular direction. So that's what sales really looked like at that point.
Yeah, really reactive from that standpoint and just the flow of that. So Michael, you come in, you get introduced to Jason, and you start with the organization. What jumped out to you early as you started to see this company that had been, I guess, evolving into the next level from an ICP, from a positioning standpoint, really an evolution? Jason, kudos for you for seeing writing on the wall for a certain marketplace and then evolving in there. That's hard enough as a founder often to do. But Michael, from your perspective, what did you see early on when you started to work with Jason?
Well, the first thing that was really helpful is that it was a very great company culture. So they had the strong family ties within the organization, and they worked very effectively. And it's very much of a process-driven company. It's documented the heck out of everything. So all those things were well put together. And then driving on EOS, it had all of the methodologies of EOS. All those fundamentals were really strong. And it allowed me to come in and jumpstart the sales organization. But what I had to do was pivot everybody from this retail organization with a small average dollar sales to where we're really targeting industrial accounts. You've got a completely different buyer who you have to communicate in a different way. And deal sizes are dramatically greater. So you've got sales cycle lengths that aren't, answering the phone and do you have, 100 of these? Yes. Okay. Sell them to me. Now you're talking about having to make contact with somebody, build a relationship, explain who we are, how we can help them, and what do they really need. The first year or so is really pivoting the organization and then hiring people that fit that model and organizing the sales structure so that we have differentiated roles. That was something where, Jason mentioned earlier, everybody did everything. Well, in sales, you can't do that. You've got to have highly specific roles where people have a singular responsibility, whether it's hunting, account management, handling the inbound web orders, et cetera. So organizing all that and then getting people to go after a different buyer. It was really exciting. And honestly, Jason's father, Alan, was hesitant. He built, at that point, 30-year company, and he knew his customer. And now suddenly he's going after an entirely new customer they didn't know. Once I got credibility with Alan, it really allowed us to move forward faster. And then, the key part of this role as the fractional head of sales is you become the sales leader. But you have that role with your gravitas, but it's much more effective when people see the success and they really buy in and they have confidence that the decisions that you're making are in the best interest of the organization. And, once we had that, we started hiring people that really fit the organizational model we wanted, and marketing changed. Instead of investing all of the marketing spend to the retail customer, we started to slowly pivot towards an industrial customer marketing spend. And as we did that, we really started to change the brand. And over a period of years, now we really are an industrially focused ball bearing supplier. And that's where the vast majority of our revenue comes from.
This is the interesting part of the story, because Jason, I looked at your website before, and I would have not guessed the story, because it screams the bearing side, the industrial side. That's where you've got your ICP nailed from a website standpoint. So I want to go back to you guys. You both mentioned EOS, and take a second there, because you're thinking about a pivot to who does roles, responsibilities. How did you define kind of EOS as right people, right seats, right? And so from a sales perspective, either Jason or Michael, how did that process work of changing some people that had worked in an area, now they've got maybe a slightly different seat, determining, is this person the right fit? Was that smooth? Was that bumpy? Talk to me about how you got to right people, right seats from a sales perspective.
I mean, from my perspective, it's always bumpy, right? And it's always a bit of trial and error. There's really no other way, right? I mean, you identify something that is what you're looking for, and then you're trying to find somebody that fits that. And sometimes they fit that right off the bat, and then that changes over time. And sometimes people are just naturally that. And we are lucky to have some people who have been with us a long time who are naturally that we rely on. And as we try to grow the organization, that's Michael's challenge, is to try to find those new people that fit into that. And then even taking some people who are at other positions and moving them up into these new roles. And I am tremendously grateful that I have Michael to do that, so that I don't have to really focus on it.
Yeah. So you're pivoting, you get your alignment on right people, you're starting to get a sales strategy, you've got a new ICP, you've got these initiatives that are being built around this. Where were there challenges as you started to make the shift? Or was the marketplace really receptive early on? How did it evolve? Talk to me about the pathway there.
I mean, there's lots of challenges, right? I'll speak to some. I'll let Michael do it as well. But I think the thing I'm most focused on now, and have been over the last few years, is bringing everybody into alignment on messaging and how they are qualifying leads and customers as they come in, because not everybody's equal, but salespeople want to chase every opportunity. And we have, like you're saying, this ideal profile, but it's not black and white. There are areas of gray in it, but they have to be able to get that discovery done, as opposed to just really looking to make a quote. And salespeople want to get the business, and they want to get make the customer whole and give them a price and move to an order. But we really try to identify things that help us just without just giving a price. And I think that's been probably our biggest challenge, is with some of the people, is getting them into this process, a good discovery process up front.
Yeah, so while the company was is well structured, from a sales organization, it was not. So did not have a CRM. So they were using the ERP tool as a CRM, which doesn't work. So we needed to install HubSpot and get people the rhythm of HubSpot, the capabilities, and train them to what it's able to do. We didn't have well-defined job descriptions, and we had zero incentive compensation. So we built out the incentive plans, and now people have clarity in how much more money they can make And they do. The people are well rewarded by doing the things that we want them to do. And the other thing that incentive plans do, and that we did here, was we targeted it to the strategy. So obviously it's a different strategy. So, we had strategies of margin growth. We had strategies of selling, we have a ceramic bearings and non-ceramic bearings. We want to sell and become the industry leader in ceramic bearings. So we had incentive plans on selling more ceramic bearing than non-ceramic. And then we have team bonuses against that. So we identified what the sales strategies were and then built incentive compensation that matched all of those strategies. And that really accelerated things. We have taken the margin for the company up many, many points overall over the couple of years. We've been able to sell now. We almost got there. We're 49.8% ceramic revenue last year versus we almost got to the 50-50, which will be, considering where we started, where it was almost a 70-30 against. We almost got there, and we had a record year last year, and we're now at 50% growth over the last few years. So these things start with infrastructure. They start with creating the cadence with it, and then with the EOS, we have weekly sales meetings that are about an hour and 20 minutes long each, that are the L10 meetings that are highly structured. We have the bi-monthly one-on-ones to really keep people having clarity, using HubSpot to really drive some of the data behind those conversations. So we use HubSpot to support the one-on-one meetings to be able to validate sales activity, number of deals, how those deals are moving forward. So we're able to use that tool to hold people accountable, but also help them bring value.
Most companies don't have the bandwidth to build a high-functioning sales department to allow them to meet their revenue targets. With Sales Xceleration, they don't have to. Our experienced fractional sales leaders consult and implement your sales strategy, infrastructure, management, and team development. Discover how we deploy these proven sales solutions to address your sales challenges by going to our website and filling out the contact form. We'd love to hear from you. We get this question a lot, right? What's a good sales L10 look like? I mean, I think oftentimes the leadership L10, you've got an implementer, US implementer, integrator that's working and make sure you have a great level 10 at the leadership level. But sometimes that pull down to have great sales L10s, it can be a little bit more problematic. So talk to me about how you've structured kind of that sales L10. What works and what challenges did you have in kind of building that?
So the most important area of a quality sales meeting is for the salespeople to feel at the end of the meeting that it was for them. And if your sales meeting is about going in and hammering the team for not doing all the things you're looking for them to do, we can have other things. You can do that at other times of the week. Sales meetings got to be about getting together, looking at best practice sharing, identifying the things that are in front of them that are hurting their performance, whether it's non-selling activities that are denying them the ability to have all the time they need to follow up. So once the sales team really believes that it's about them, then they start holding themselves accountable. So we have a very good process where people make issues about their own performance. I'm sorry I didn't make enough phone calls, or I didn't do these things that you expected me to do. And that again then holds like personal accountability, but asking people to help them get better. And we do a lot of that as well. And I think that's a real strong reflection of a quality meeting.
Yeah, I love that, because for those listening, if you are a business owner in the SMB space and you're holding a sales meeting and it's really just a pipeline review, that's not what this is about. It's about growing together, knocking down barriers for the sales team so that they can explore and sell more. And again, when you're focused on just the same pipeline over and over, run a win lab, run a pipeline review once a month, have your stuff updated in CRM. That's all fine, but that's very different than a good, effective sales meeting that actually enhances what the sales team is delivering upon. So well put, Michael. So we're going through this. We've talked a little bit about tools, CRM, anything else that you guys have built as you've made this shift from a technology standpoint that you're utilizing. And again, kudos to you both for amazing growth. 50% is outstanding, and especially in time when you were pivoting. But what other tools have you used that have helped support kind of your growth engine?
Being here for a couple of years at this point, I could see the big struggle in building the sales organization is the fact that Jason manages a business with tens of thousands of parts and part numbers, and it's complex. Boca Bearings has tens of thousands of part numbers, and those parts satisfy different applications for different customers. We supply parts, ball bearings, all the way from just a regular fisherman to NASA, and we have ball bearings that go up in space. We've got ball bearings that are in medical devices, surgical centers, robotic surgical centers. We have them underwater. So it's a very technical product. And so, yeah, you don't find people in your geography that know much of anything about bearings. So the challenge was, it took about 18 months for people to start feeling comfortable in being able to identify and recommend, ask the right questions, and really bring a lot of value to a customer. And before that, they are asking questions internally. They're grabbing other people with a lot more experience. It's like an all hands on deck sales process, which is inefficient and challenging. So we identified that AI could really come in and revolutionize this process. And we built an AI agent brain that we brought in all of our data, all of our company information that a salesperson would need, from sales processes, how to use the IT system, a lot of the different bearing types, all the information around it, price points. And from that, they're able to go in and type or vocalize, this customer needs this is the application, this is how many they need, this is the price that they're interested in paying, and the system will tell them good, better, best. And so we created this, and then talking points around that. So now we've been able to have a salesperson start and be comfortable in a few months instead of 18 months. So what does that do? It doesn't tie down other people in the organization for a long period of time. They feel comfortable. They start seeing their own value. They feel better about what they're doing, and they're making more money. They're getting commissions and bonuses that they weren't able to get before because their sales were lower. So this has really revolutionized our sales team.
Love it. Great use of efficiency. I mean, so many times we see our clients are trying to find that AI solution, but when you see the real world application of what it meant for your business from an efficiency standpoint, organizational standpoint, you can see the power of it. Jason, anything that you would want to add to where you guys have gone from a technology standpoint, tool standpoint, that jumps out to you?
I guess, again, we love technology, and we like these tools. So we do have a lot in terms of our technology stack. Something just as simple as our ERP package. We use Business Central Microsoft Dynamics, which is a ERP package for multi-million-dollar companies. And, we're under 10 million, but we rely on that. And we put that in really right before COVID hit, and we didn't miss a beat when everybody went to work remotely. Our entire ERP was in the cloud, and everything worked really seamlessly. And that was a tremendous benefit to us. But we're an EOS company, and that technology alone is transformational, but we use 90.io. So when you talk about running meetings, it's structured. You really don't have the ability to go off on too many tangents. You're really kept to a particular agenda, and we're focused on issues. We're really focused on trying to put up issues, solve issues, deal with issues. And the L10 for me is the thing that lets me sleep at night, and 90 particularly because I have full visibility into every team, every scorecard, every to-do, every issue, every rock. We have it centralized in a way that I don't really have to chase or worry about it. So I think that in terms of technology has been tremendous for us. We've also recently implemented Profit First using an app called Profit Pro. So that is more of a company management tool. But before that tool, we were suffering from cash flow problems, and cash flow problems breeds culture problems because it creates these fire drills where employees feel as though things are a little bit out of control. You're cutting costs and you're pulling back on initiatives, and you're changing employees, quite frankly, and they feel that. And once we use this new system, we really got a handle on all of that stuff. And I think it's changed the culture tremendously.
Yeah, really cool. Again, now all the different tools you're using intelligently, and it speaks of a well-run business think clients can count on and consistently deliver. So, Jason, you had mentioned obviously you found Michael through the network, that connectedness, right? It sounds like you're exploring that. How else have you found other, as far as relationships and networks and other resources that you've used your network to introduce you to? Has it been tools or other individuals, or just talk to me about how you use your network to help support your business?
I mean, that network is everything. That network really all came through Grow Florida, who introduced me to the CEO roundtable concept that put me every 30 days at a table with a group of individuals doing the same thing I'm doing. And that tool, that network alone is really why I think we're here today and why Michael's here with us and why all those programs we're using are being used. It's all because of that network. And a lot of that, I'm sure, I don't know if you're familiar, but a lot of that really stems from the Edward Lowe Foundation out in Cassopolis, Michigan, who has supported and exported a lot of these programs that we're talking about. And I try to go every year to a retreat at the Edward Lowe Foundation. It's a business retreat. I go every month to the CEO roundtable that is thrown by CEO Nexus, but again is part of this bigger program. And I go every year to the CEO Nexus event, which brings a lot of these people together locally here, usually up in Central Florida. But those tools really are the reason we use all these other things. It comes through that group.
Love it. Yeah. And again, being a leader that challenge yourself to always be learning from others, taking that advice and putting it into practice is really amazing to see. And again, reflects on the growth that you guys have had. So
one more thing, Lee, one of the big values that a fractional sales leader also brings to a client like Boca Bearings are relationships that I have and best practices and really strong people that, whether it's tools people, that will facilitate the growth. So, I like to say, we have a periscope. We're meeting people all the time. We're testing out tools. We're being introduced to new things. And Jason's been extremely willing to listen. And when it makes sense, we bring it in. With the AI agent concept, he was very willing to do. And I think that's really great to have a client that has that kind of willingness to listen and embrace change.
Yeah, I think that's oftentimes what gets missed within sales acceleration because, yes, we have decades of sales experience. It's typically sales executive experience. And so I can tell in talking with you today, you two have a partnership together, right? Not only exploring sales, but growing the business overall. And so I think when you get a sales acceleration advisor, yes, you get a sales process structure, methodology, but you also get somebody that's helping to grow the business overall. Because again, we love it when we're delivering 50% ROI like you guys have done together. So I think that's a really good point, Michael. Jason, we're going to have a lot of business owners in the SMB space that are going to be listening to this. You made the decision to go with an SX advisor and Michael, and obviously it's been great results. But for some of those business owners that are thinking about that next level of getting an SX advisor, any last thoughts of what that relationship, that partnership has meant to you in the growth of your business?
There's a few things that really stand out to me. The first thing is that when Michael came to me, his value proposition to me was, I'm going to build your program, I'm going to build your processes, I'm going to build your team, and then I'm going to find my replacement and I'm going to step aside. And we decided not to do that. And we've kept Michael in that position. There's a lot of reasons, right? But I think these things that we're talking about, building out HubSpot and identifying your customer profile and doing these things, is not a short process, and it takes a good amount of time to get right. And that first year or that second year or whatever it is, changing that position to somebody else, I feel like I'm going to lose a lot of this. It's really intellectual property on a lot of levels, right? It's our company advantage, the knowledge that we've acquired, the knowledge that Michael has acquired. And I want to build on that. I don't want to remove that. So I personally have stayed with this model because I find it to be beneficial. The other thing I find beneficial is that when we had a full-time sales manager, a lot of times what that looked like was a guy who was selling part of the time and managing a sales team part of the time. And inevitably what happened to us was that all of that selling tends to become the priority, and the managing slowly gets smaller and smaller in terms of priority. And then when there is the managing, what it looked like a lot of times was a lot of hand-holding and babysitting. There's no other way to really say that. But Michael doesn't have the time, because he's part-time fractional. He doesn't have the time to do some of that other stuff that I would consider to be low-level managing that isn't priority, that forces the sales team to either step up or step aside. So if they need that kind of support, they're not right for the organization. And we identify that, and we're capable of identifying that. Michael's capable of identifying that. If they're willing to step up and really be more self-managing and self-directed, then they're the right person and they're staying long-term. And I think having a fractional CFO forces that. With the full-time guy, I really feel like we always got lost in that weeds. The guy's always going to want to be focused on selling because he thinks that brings the most value to the company, and the managing part doesn't. But I know, because I know how hard it was for me, that all the things that Michael is doing are all the things that are a priority. And he's able to be laser focused on that. So that's been the value for me.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. And, when we think about it, the perspective too, you want it at the end of the day, you want accountability, your sales team, you want a strategy, but then you got to trust them to go out and execute. So, having a pivotal part of the week where they come in and say, here's what we've done, here's our progressing, knocking down barriers and obstacles and moving forward, and then letting them go and do what they do well, that's not a bad thing either as well. So I think that's really well put. Michael, anything you would add that's been missed here today?
I've done this now 10 years. So I've had over 45 clients in those 10 years. And I can say I've met so many business owners, and they all want to grow. Everybody wants to double. How do I get there? What's it going to take? And the couple of, shortcomings with that is, one, they oftentimes don't understand that it's a process, and it's a longer process than they believe it should take. The snowball, you put the infrastructure, you start building the process, you get the people aligned, and you start seeing incremental success. But a lot of times they become frustrated because they think that success should happen in a much faster period of time than it does. But the big success really happens in year 2, 3, 4, not in the first 6 months. And secondly, you have to have an owner that is committed to that process. You need to bring in an expert that understands how to run sales and run a sales team, and brings in all of this experience of all their other personal history and business history, and then creating a trust and a partnership so that letting that person do what they need to do, and you run the company.
Kudos to you both for the growth that you've had at Boca Bearings. Jason, great to hear your story and all your success and really transitioning the company. And I know how challenging that could be. So remarkable that the success you've had together. I thank you both for being on. This has been another episode of Sales Against the Odds. Join in 2 weeks where we'll have another business thought leader that talks about their changes and shifts and how they've grown their business. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Michael. You've been listening to Sales Against the Odds. Be sure to hit that follow button so you never miss an episode. And if you want more resources on scaling sales, check out our website at salesxceleration.com.